is Akshat Shah, and I'm a student from grade 10 studying in Mumbai. And over the past few years, I've gained an interest in finance to the extent to which I might want to get into finance and perhaps explore it as a possible future career path. But I realized that I need to learn more about finance to do so. That's why I decided to speak to close friends and family who have big positions in the finance industry and could guide me as towards the best possible option for me. And during my conversations with my friends and family, I realized that there are so many students just like me in high school who also want to get into finance and possibly explore it in the future but don't know where to get started. That's why that sparked an idea in me to start a podcast where I can share my learning with you guys to help you all learn more about what a finance career might look like and how you can best get started in the industry from advice from industry experts and industry leaders who've spent years in the finance industry and have enough knowledge. Today's podcast focusing on one of India's most pivotal companies and its Director and Chief Financial Officer, Deepesh Baxi. Castrol India is one of the world's largest lubricant manufacturers and has been in the market for almost a century. But for a company which makes thousands of crores in revenue each year, managing its finances and acquisitions is a tough challenge. But thus, in this video, we'll go over the key financial strategies and processes which have been set in place by the finance department to manage these challenges, along with key college course requirements that a student might take if you want to work at the finance department of a company like Castrol. So please enjoy the show. Yeah, so it's good to have you, and I just wanted to start by asking, what are your qualifications and, where do you study at college, etc.
Okay, so Akshat, first of all, thanks for having me
Yeah.
on this conversation. My name is Deepesh Baxi, and I'm born and brought up in Mumbai, and I studied my graduation in Mumbai. I did my graduation from Sydenham College, and then I pursued a chartered accountancy course. So I'm a chartered accountant by profession. And then after that, I also did MBA, which is from IIM Ahmedabad.
Yeah. And so you said that you're a chartered accountant. So can you just, I don't know how many viewers know that, but can you just tell us, what is a CA, what is a chartered accountant, and what do you do?
Yeah. So chartered accountancy is a is a course where you are a professional in accountancy, to put it very simply, and in fact, like how you have experts in medicine who are called doctors, similarly experts in accountancy and finance are called chartered accountancy. And typically this is a 3-year course. You do a couple of exams, and then you also do a practical experience called articleship. And then once you pass these exams, you are given a degree called ACA.
Okay, so can you just tell me what's the full form of ACA?
So ACA is Associate Chartered Accountant. So people who work in organizations, they normally use ACA. However, people who are doing their own professional firms, they are called FCA, which is a Fellow Chartered Accountant.
Okay.
But I don't think those are nuances. Essentially, you're somebody who can advise on financial statements, and as a chartered accountant, you have the authority to sign off or attest financial statements or annual reports of any company.
And what are financial statements? Can you just give a brief on that?
Yeah, so financial statements, any organization, any business, small or big, generally would want to let the regulatory authorities know that what business they have done during the year in terms of the numbers, whether it's turnover, profits, those are true and fair, and they are, and that's what a chartered accountant does. And the entire set of accounts are either balance sheet, profit and loss account, and cash flow.
Okay. And so you said you did an MBA from IIM,
Yeah.
right? So I just want you to ask regarding that. How important would you say an MBA is for somebody who wants to get into the finance industry, and how helpful do you think that would be to get a job?
Yeah, no, good question. Look, I think if you want to be in the finance industry, then I think the first basic and most important degree to pursue is chartered accountancy.
Yeah.
I think that's the core, that's the fundamental. MBA, I think, is more as an add-on, whereas MBA also can be a standalone degree.
Yeah.
I can give you my experience why
Yeah.
I did MBA. Well, I worked in an organization, and after working about 7-8 years, I realized that beyond the finance and accounting, I needed experience on understanding various other parts of the business management, like strategy, supply chain operations, HR, etc. So MBA enables you to get a much broader perspective of all the facets of business management.
Yeah.
So while CA is very narrow and it is specialist, MBA is much broader and it's a generalist. So
Okay.
as you go up the organization, I think the MBA skills are put to more
Yeah.
use than at a lower or early part of your career, where I think the CA degree is put to more use.
Okay. Yeah. And so, you are director of finance at Castrol. So, I mean, can you just tell us, a brief on, just what Castrol is and, what is your role at Castrol?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'm the head of finance,
Yeah.
basically, and as part of my finance function, I run a team, and so I run the treasury function for Castrol India, and I also run the credit function. Credit function is where you need to decide as a finance organization how much extra money you can sort of give to your customers. Then we do reporting, accounting and reporting. So accounting for all the transaction in books, and then reporting to either your head office, which is in UK, or reporting to stock exchange, which is a listed entity requirement. And then I have a function which does performance management or financial forecasting.
Yeah.
So we are basically making the plan for the rest of the year, or maybe for 3 years, 5 years. So one of the teams does that. And then we also have plants, manufacturing locations. So you also need finance people in the location, in the plants. And my team members sit in these plants. We have 3 plant locations. So they look after the compliance aspect. And then finally, there is a function which looks after audit, controls, and risk management. I mean, apart from that, there is strategy and M&A, of course. So I think various small functions, make up a finance function of any organization, and that's what I do. And my role is, of course, to make sure that I run this team, but also at the same time I support the business to give them evaluate financial and commercial proposals if they come up with new ideas.
And so you mentioned M&A. Can you just tell what M&A is and brief about that?
Yeah. So M&A is mergers and acquisitions. So if we want to invest in a particular opportunity or a company, or even if we want to divest, then M&A comes into play, right? So as an organization, as a company, you want to grow, and you may want to grow in an inorganic way, where M&A comes in. So that's what this team really does.
And what would you say would be an organic way to grow?
Organic way to grow is so we sell lubricants. So an organic growth is typically what are the various ways you can grow within the same core business. So how do you sell more of lubricants? And you do that without acquiring another organization. So for example, now that in rural India is growing. So then one of the things which we are looking at is how do we grow in rural? So that's new source of revenue from rural, but that's still organic growth. And inorganic growth could be buying another company and saying, oh look, suddenly overnight you have a huge amount of lubricant volumes coming to our organization. So that's what is the difference between organic and inorganic.
And so another question I wanted to ask you was, so working at Castrol, I mean, a lot of people wanted to know, as you are working at you're the head of finance. What would you say would be the, average day-to-day life experience maybe of a, of an intern maybe working at the finance department at Castrol? And would you say there's any prior, course or requirement you need of a candidate who's applying for a job at Castrol, at the finance department?
So if somebody wants to work in a finance function, I think basic accounting graduate is the basic degree I would expect them to have. The reason being because in large organization you have to have some knowledge to start off, even if you want to do basic work. So that's from a technical point of view. But from softer skills, I think a person who's willing to learn, willing to make their hands dirty, willing to ask questions, and has a very open attitude to learn and do different things and experiment. I think those skills are what is required as an intern. If I'm suppose recruiting somebody in my company, and the kind of work they would do will be initially, I think, basic. So we may give a proposal, a small proposal saying, if you invest so much money of capital expenditure, then can you calculate what could be the returns through that over a period of 4 years? So it could be a simple model on an Excel sheet. Or alternatively, we may ask the person to go meet other functions and then do a bit more auditing as to if somebody is buying and selling, then how are we making sure that there are enough controls in place so that there are no errors. So it can differ. It also depends on what the person's inclination is in terms of learning.
Okay. So you would look at maybe what your preferences are as well, and maybe what they're good at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Because then it helps the person to learn, because you are there in the organization for a short period of time, and it's best that we try to match that. And not always can you match, because but that would be the endeavor.
Okay. And you mentioned the term capital expenditure. So can you just tell what is capital expenditure?
So capital expenditure meaning, so there are two types of expenses in any organization. There is revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Revenue expenditure is your day-to-day expenditure. It is like employee cost or electricity. These are like revenue expenditure. Capital expenditure is something which is much more, the benefits of that expense is for a longer period of time. Let's say you buy a machine. So if you buy a machine, you will use it for production of goods. The benefit of that will come for more than 1 year for sure, right? So that's generally capital expenditure. Or let's say you invest in technology. So that technology expenditure, when you have a new app system, like an ERP system, that's a capital expenditure. You build a building, then that's a capital expenditure. So short term or long term, that's the differentiating factor between revenue expenditure or capital expenditure.
Okay. And so, another thing I just wanted to ask was, I think the pressing question for most people was, do you think that the college that somebody goes to matters when they're applying for a job at the finance department at Castrol?
I think yes and no. Okay. Why yes and no? Let me explain that to you. I think an individual would want to see, because every college has some perception about how good that institution is. Because if you are top-notch institution, then you will have a cutoff on your academic score, which is very high. But if you're not, then you're more flexible. So I think we obviously have some criteria of the institutions or colleges that we would want to recruit. They should be reasonably good institutions.
So like the IIMs maybe.
IIM is the top notch. But that doesn't mean we would not recruit from institutes other than IIM also. Okay. So I would say, so answering your question, I said yes because institution has to be reasonably good. Let's say it should be, if not the top notch, one level below the top notch. Okay. Why I said no is, personally, I believe for being successful in life, it is not necessary that you have to be from the best institutes, because you have many examples of people who have not been from good institutes and yet. So it is more got to do with your own personal desire to succeed, your aspiration, right head on the shoulder in terms of your intent on what you want to do, how hardworking you are. So those skills at least in the long term will help.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would look for a candidate who's summarize a pretty reasonable institute, but that's not give and take all. I wouldn't
Okay.
drop somebody who comes across very good in the interview
Yeah.
and has a compelling reason for joining Castrol,
Yeah.
because I would also want to know why are they keen to join
Yeah.
this company? What have they heard about this
Yeah.
company? Why would they be in this industry,
Yeah.
for example? So I think those factors also play a lot.
Okay. And so I wanted to ask another thing was, so you said that you will also ask people, why they, you just mentioned right now that you want to know why people wanted to perhaps join Castrol.
Mhm.
What would you say would be the number one thing? I mean, you tell people who want to not just Castrol, but work at the finance department of any company. What would you say would be number of advice you'd give them to maybe get the best job they want, or get the best out of the finance career that they were pursuing?
Look, I think for finance, your skills develop over a period of time.
Yeah.
So I would say that, don't restrict yourself to just theoretical knowledge.
Yeah.
Take as much practical experience as possible. I think that is very important. So that's one. Secondly, if you want to be successful in finance, then more than just the finance core skills, you also need to be willing to experiment things. If you don't succeed, it's okay.
Yeah.
Try new ways of doing things, and then speak to people, speak to experienced people, and take their advice in terms of for example, if somebody wants to come in a corporate world,
Yeah.
how do you find your way through corporate world? What are the things that you should do, not do? Because it's very different working in a corporate world. It's very different working in a individual startup.
Yeah.
It's different. So as a young graduate,
Yeah.
discuss, take ideas, maybe have a mentor
Yeah.
who can help you and guide you from time to time. I think those are more important things as you climb up the ladder of corporate world, and nothing comes easy.
Yeah.
So there are no shortcuts.
Yeah.
There's no shortcut to success. There's no shortcut to hard work.
Yeah.
So have patience and believe in yourself.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I just want to ask one last thing.
Yeah.
What would be the the biggest piece of advice you'd give someone who wants to perhaps more than just working at the working at the finance department of a company, wants to perhaps one day start their own company, working their own finance company, or their own startup in regards to finance? What would be the number one advice you'd give to them?
I would say if you want to do a startup, then startup this is my view, because I come from a non-startup
Yeah.
background, and for me, not only having the right idea is important, but also being very clear on path to profitability. It's not, if you want to have an enduring company or organization startup, then think long term. If your intent is to do something, have a valuation and move on, that's a very different
Yeah.
matter. So I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about more if you want to have a company which is
Yeah.
more enduring. So path to profitability have to be
Yeah.
very, very clear. Why would people buy your product if it's a
Yeah.
product company or a service company? That's one. Secondly, don't take shortcuts.
Yeah.
Be ethical. Very, very important. I think if one cuts corners
Yeah.
and try to find wrong ways of doing things, you will get caught into
Yeah.
something or the other.
Yeah.
And that's not good as a
Yeah.
reputation to build
Yeah.
early in your career.
Yeah.
So it is important to set track record.
Yeah.
Even if your startup is not successful, that's okay.
Yeah.
But have you given a genuine attempt? I think that's more important to me, and that is what I will look for,
Yeah.
rather than a successful startup as well.
Yeah.
The journey is more important than the end point.
Okay.
I think that is what I would tell and advise
Yeah.
young people who want to get into startup.
Yeah, and so one thing I want to ask is, what qualities would you say, other than just the financial knowledge that somebody would have, what qualities, or maybe around teamwork or something else, would you say would be important as well when you'd be looking to hire someone to work at the finance department at perhaps your company?
Yeah. No, I mean, teamwork is very important. I think, but more importantly, one needs to also understand external point of view, because what happens is many people who work in their own organization get so internally focused
Yeah.
that they lose the picture of outside.
Yeah.
Therefore, look at competition
Yeah.
in terms of what is the business you are in or the service you are in, how is the competition behaving, and what do you need to do. So externally focus is a very important skill required, irrespective of whether you are in finance
Yeah.
function or not, but for finance function as well. Because let's take an example, you have, as a finance function, you are evaluating your results
Yeah.
of your company. It means nothing unless you compare it with something.
Yeah.
Either you compare your results with your own past results,
Yeah.
or you compare with your competition.
Yeah.
So then you know whether you are really successful. So I think that is a very important skill required in terms of being externally focused.
Yeah, and so when you're talking in your organization, in terms of the people with various degrees that you all have, would you say you have which degree individual do you have the most in your organization? Is it the CAs or the MBAs or those who have taken business management? What would you say in your organizations approximately the highest degree?
So I would say in my team,
Yeah.
I would say most of the people are chartered accountants.
Yeah.
And then there are a few who are cost accountants, and then there are a few who are masters in business management but in finance.
Yeah.
But I would say about 70% would be chartered accountants,
Okay.
and the rest 30% is the other degrees.
And are most of them like done the chartered accountant or whatever degrees in India, or some of them you have from abroad as well?
No, most of them, actually practically everybody is done from India.
Okay. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's it for today's podcast. So, I mean, thank you for being here, and we're glad to have you.
Thank you Akshat, and thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be bringing on more guests and industry leaders who can give their insight and share their experiences on the industry. Please let me know if there is a specific industry you'd like me to go over as well. And please like, share and subscribe, and share it especially with those students just like yourself who can also gain insight out of this, and we can help everyone achieve learn more.